Have you ever wondered why some countries have kings while others have presidents? Or why some nations have strict laws dictated by religion while others vote on every single issue? To understand our world, we have to look at the blueprint of power. Today, we are breaking down the massive, complex machine of global politics. We're asking the big questions. Who holds the power? How did they get it? And perhaps most importantly, by looking at others, how can we better evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of our own systems? Let's dive into the fascinating world of comparative government. Imagine all governments as a pyramid. At the very top, we have the simplest form, autocracy. This is rule by one. Think of a single figure standing at the peak, holding all the cards. Move down a layer, and the group widens slightly. This is oligarchy, rule by the few. A select club making the decisions. Finally, at the base, the widest section, democracy. This is rule by the many. It's a simple classification, but as we'll see, the lines between one, few, and many can sometimes get blurry. If we zoom out, we see a family tree of governance. A government isn't just one thing, it splits into different species. On one side, you might have a monarchy leading to kings and queens. On another, a democracy that splits into presidents and parliaments. But there are darker branches too. Military regimes, dictatorships, and despotism. And sometimes the tree collapses entirely into anarchy. Today, we're going to climb every branch of this tree to see how they function. First, let's talk about geography and control. In a unitary system, the central government is the boss. It holds nearly all the power. Local governments exist, but they are just there to execute commands from the top. Countries like the United Kingdom, Japan, and France operate this way. The pro? It's incredibly efficient. Decisions are made and rolled out fast. The con? The central government might completely ignore or simply not understand local needs. Now, contrast that with a federal system. Here, power is shared. The central government has a job, but so do the states or provinces, and a constitution protects those lower levels from being bullied. We see this in the United States, Mexico, and Germany. It's a system designed to balance power, but let's be honest, it can get complicated. Who is responsible for what? That's the eternal question in federalism. Then there is the rarest form, the confederal system. Picture a group of friends who agree to work together, but keep their own bank accounts. Independent states unite for common goals, but the central government remains weak. The European Union is the best modern example, or the historic Confederate States in America. You get high local control, but unity is often fragile and weak. Let's move to how laws are actually made. In a parliamentary system, there is a fusion of power. The prime minister isn't elected separately. They are chosen directly by the legislature. It's a package deal. The executive and legislative branches are fused together. This happens in Canada and the UK. A key feature here is the vote of no confidence. If the legislature decides the leader is failing, they can remove them immediately. Compare that to the presidential system, like in the United States or Brazil. Here, the president is elected independently. You might vote for a legislature from one party and a president from another. The branches remain separate. Presidents serve fixed terms and are very hard to remove, usually only through a difficult impeachment process. It offers stability, but sometimes gridlock. Let's step back into history. That still exists today. Absolute monarchy. This is rule by one, hereditary power passed down through bloodlines or claimed by divine right. The monarch's word is law. While rare now, we still see this in nations like Saudi Arabia, Oman, and Eswatini. In these systems, there are essentially no constitutional limits on the ruler. But not all kings have absolute power. In a constitutional monarchy, The monarch is a ceremonial head. They cut ribbons and host dinners, but the real power lies with an elected parliament. The Constitution strictly limits what the monarch can do. The United Kingdom, Japan, and Spain are perfect examples. They keep the tradition, but the people hold the reins. Now we enter the darker side of our power pyramid: dictatorship and authoritarianism. Here, power is acquired not by votes, but through force, military control, or fear. Civil rights, severely limited. The opposition isn't just outvoted, they are jailed or eliminated. We see this tragedy playing out in places like North Korea and Syria. Take authoritarianism and dial it up to the extreme, and you get totalitarianism. This is extreme control over every single aspect of life: the economy, education, media, and even your private life. The state is supreme. The individual is nothing. History gave us Nazi Germany and Stalin's USSR, and today, North Korea remains the prime example of this terrifying system. What if the law of the land is the word of God? That is a theocracy. Religious leaders rule, claiming divine guidance. The legal system isn't based on a constitution written by lawyers, but on religious texts. In places like Iran or Vatican City, civil rights are often restricted if they conflict with religious doctrine. Remember the middle of our pyramid? Oligarchy. A small elite group rules. This group could be the military, a specific political party, or the ultra-wealthy. When the wealthy rule, we call it plutocracy. In these systems, decisions are made to benefit the elite, not the public. We saw this with the oligarchs in post-Soviet Russia and within the elite circles of China's Communist Party. Let's swing back to the people. Direct democracy is the purest form of rule by many. Citizens vote directly on laws, not just for representatives who make the laws. It's rare in large nations because it's hard to organize millions of people for every decision. However, we see glimpses of it in Switzerland's referendums and the historic town halls of New England. Economics and government often overlap. In socialist governments, the government controls major industries to ensure equality. High taxes fund extensive services like healthcare and education. This is a spectrum. On one end, you have the democratic socialism of Scandinavia, and on the far other end, the Marxist-Leninism seen in Cuba. It's about how much of the pie the government manages. This brings us to communism. In theory, it is a classless society with common ownership, no rich, no poor. But the reality has often been a totalitarian, single-party state. These nations utilize a centrally planned economy. Examples like China, Vietnam, and Cuba show that while the economic theory is about sharing, the political reality is often about control. Governments change. Transitional governments appear in countries moving between systems after war or revolution. These are fragile times, with a high risk of instability or reverting to dictatorship, as seen in Libya or Afghanistan. Conversely, we have supranational organizations like the EU or UN. Here, nations actually surrender some sovereignty for mutual benefit, creating governance that sits above the nation-state. So how do we measure success? Organizations like Freedom House use the Democracy Index to assess electoral processes and civil liberties. But there is a concerning trend: democratic backsliding. Around the world, we are seeing established democracies slowly becoming more authoritarian. It is a reminder that freedom is not guaranteed. It has to be maintained. We've looked at kings, presidents, dictators, and oligarchs. The takeaway? No system is perfect. There are always trade-offs: efficiency versus freedom, or stability versus representation. These systems adapt through culture and history. By understanding how others organize power, we don't just learn about them, we improve our understanding of our own place in the world. Thanks for watching.